With that, let's bring in Tim. What's up, Tim?
Hey, what's up, guys? How we doing today?
Brother? We're good. We're good.
Good.
We're asking whether or not this is sort of a punt game because Deshaun Watson now mysteriously, after being cleared to play 2 weeks ago, won't play if these reports are right on Sunday. And now also Mary Kay Cabot reporting that it looks like Bitonio and Njoku are also unlikely to play. Do you think if Watson was playing that Bitonio and Njoku, who finished the last game, would be on the field as well? Or is this just a punt?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. I think those guys would be out there if they could. I think they're obviously working through things. But, it does make a huge difference with Deshaun not being out there going to play a team like San Francisco, who might be the best team in the league right now. And we're obviously, down several of our guys. So it's just one of those games. You hope everybody's healthy coming off a bye week, but that's just not necessarily the case in this situation. So hopefully those guys can get healthy and get back out on the field as soon as possible.
Tim, go ahead, Jason.
Tim, make it make sense. What's going on with Deshaun? Like, you've played this position. I don't understand how we go from guys in the locker room, even after the game the other day, telling me, oh, he'll play against San Francisco. He's good. Kevin and Andrew saying he's going to play against San Francisco. And then I see him in the locker room Wednesday, and he can't even put his shoes away with his right arm. He has to use his left arm. He doesn't look like he's anywhere near playing. Make it make sense for us.
Well, I think it's just one of those things that got a little worse over time. I think initially it was probably one of those injuries where, he thought, I'll be back in a week. I can work through this. I feel myself getting better. And then you have a setback. And, I've kind of had that when I was playing. I had I had tendonitis in my elbow really bad. And I'm not sure exactly what Deshaun has, but, I knew with the tendonitis, it was one of those things where you just have to take time off and not use it at all. And anytime I would go out and try to throw, a couple days in a row, my arm would flare up again. And, even though I felt like I was getting better, I'd have an immediate setback with the tendonitis. So it's one of those things that you just got to take time off. And, I missed the year we went to the playoffs, actually. I missed the first 2 games of the season. You remember Kelly Holcomb started against, it was Kansas City when Dwayne Rudd threw the helmet on the last play of the game. I had to sit out that game with tendonitis. So I missed the first 2 games, but I'm glad I set out those 2 games because, I think if I would have pushed it and tried to play those 2 games, it would have been something I had to deal with the whole season. But I set out those 2 games. I felt great when I came back, and then we had the playoff run, that year, and I played the rest of the season. So, it's just one of those things. You have setbacks like that. I'm not sure, like I said, what's going on with Deshaun exactly, but those type of things do happen.
He's got a bruised rotator cuff. That's what we've been told. I was just looking at the stats, Tim, and I, just double check this. And according to the official records, you were sacked 5,362 times in your Browns career. So you probably would know about sore shoulders. I'm assuming you had a sore shoulder a time or two. How hard is it to, without knowing exactly how bad the bruise is, how hard is it to play, period, with a bruised shoulder?
It's extremely hard. I've had 2 shoulder surgeries myself. I had my first surgery when I left Cleveland. I went to Green Bay. I had my first surgery there. So I've had a torn rotator cuff, a torn labrum. I've had a torn bicep. So I've had my shoulder operated on twice. So, I know when I was in Green Bay and I started having the shoulder issues, I couldn't throw at all. I went out and played a preseason game, and I'm like one-hopping curl routes and out routes, just routine throws that I normally could make. Since I was in high school, I couldn't get the ball there anymore. I just didn't have the pop and the zip on the ball, and and I had actually had like numbness and tingling going down in my hand, and I couldn't grip the ball. So it's a lot to deal with. I don't know how bad Deshaun's is. I know mine was pretty severe, but it certainly is it's a huge deal for a quarterback. Obviously, anytime you have pain in your elbow or shoulder or wrist or hand or whatever it is, you just kind of lose the velocity and the touch and the accuracy on the ball.
Tim, I said it earlier. I think they have to prepare as if Deshaun Watson is not coming back at this season. I'm just be clear. I've had neck pain, and I've had 2 or 3 neck surgeries, and I know exactly what you're talking about. When you can't fire or your muscles don't fire because your nerves aren't hitting the right way, there's nothing you can do about it, So for me, I look at it and I feel like they got to go get another quarterback in here, another veteran, figure something out because.
Can you throw now, Tim?
No, not at all.
Not at all. That was a wrap.
I can play golf, which is, kind of underhand, so I can do that, which is all I care about. But if you get me up here and try to extend my arm, I got no chance.
That stick him behind Jed Wills right now. Come on now.
I might stick him in place of Jed Wills. I saw that gun show, son.
Yeah, that's true.
But Tim, do you think they? Because I don't think he's close to playing. Do you think you gotta look and say, because PJ Walker, he might not get it done. We need some options in here.
I think that's a great idea because, like you said, you just never know with these injuries how if he does come back. Let's say he comes back, next week or whatever. He's still one hit away from being back on the sideline. You're dealing with a bruised rotator cuff. It doesn't take much, or a throw at an awkward angle. It could be anything to kind of flare that injury back up again. So I think bringing in a veteran guy, a proven guy who can go out and who's shown he can win games in this league would certainly not be a bad option at this point.
He hasn't practiced in 2 weeks. Like, we just make it sound like, well, if his shoulder's right, just go out there and play. This offense does not look good outside of one game, and he hasn't – he needs to practice, does he not? Like, how hard is it if he's a quarterback, you're just going to roll out there and play without even practicing?
Yeah, I mean, he has to be on the practice field. You can't just roll out there and play after a couple of weeks layoff. I mean, you're obviously taking the mental reps in practice and you're watching and you're standing behind the huddle and you're going through the motions and that kind of thing. But, it's just the game speed and, the preparation that you miss when when you're at practice, when you're missing, the blitz drills in practice, you're missing the red zone period, you're missing all those crucial moments that, are going to decide if you win or lose a football game. So you have to be out there, you have to be practicing. It's just so difficult to sit out for a couple weeks and just roll back out there and play at this level. And, hopefully he can get back to where we saw him. The game where he got injured, he played lights out. It's the best game he had as a Cleveland Brown. So hopefully, once he gets healthy and gets himself back into the swing of practice, he can come in and pick up where he left off after that game.
Tim, the defense obviously played great the first 3 games, not as well against Baltimore. They really had, the offense was terrible. You going into this game, you're playing the Niners, who at this point are probably the best team in football. They're great on both sides of the ball and on special teams. Your only hope of winning this game is if the defense just plays an incredible game and probably forces turnovers. If you're a defensive player on the Browns and you know that you got P.J. Walker, you might not have your left guard, you might not have what are you thinking here? Is there a tendency for maybe guys to do too much and make mistakes?
Well, I think it's a huge game for the defense for all the reasons that you mentioned. But I think what San Francisco does really well is they present so many problems for your defense pre-snap. This is a team that's going to shift. They're going to motion almost every play. They probably lead the league in shifts and motions. And what they're trying to do is create matchups that they like for their guys. They're trying to get Christian McCaffrey or Debo or somebody on a linebacker. So you just have to have that communication on your defense. You got to find out first where these guys are lining up, and then the shift in the motion, where are they going, and make sure you have a safety or a DB covering these guys, because if they get you one-on-one with a linebacker, they're going to tear you apart. They get you out in space, and McCaffrey's going to run those option routes. Debo's going to come out of the backfield, whether it be on a handoff or a pass route, and then you get George Kittle involved as well. So it's a tough challenge for any defense in this league. It's going to be an extremely tough challenge for the Browns because they're probably not going to be able to do much offensively, much like the game against the Ravens where, the defense was on the field the whole game. So they like you said, they're going to have to create some turnovers. They're going to have to give that offense a short field. They're going to have to give them as many opportunities as possible. But it's going to be a very, very tough matchup against San Francisco. They're playing lights out right now. Their quarterback's playing great. The play callers is doing an unbelievable job. Shanahan does an unbelievable job at dialing up the plays and creating and designing things to get his guys in space and to be able to make the plays they're capable of making.
You're probably the perfect one to ask this because you played on such horrendous teams at times. You ever go into a game thinking we can't win?
No, I was probably a little delusional. But,
everybody is. You have to be.
Yeah. You have to be. I think as an athlete, it's hard to convince yourself to go out and put in the work necessary to sit in those meetings and watch all the film you have to watch and get your body ready, go into the training room every morning and getting healthy. You can't convince yourself to do that if you think there's no way I'm going to go out and win this game. So it's almost maybe a little bit of false confidence. I think in the back of your mind when you're playing a team like this and you're down some guys that, man, we got to go play a great game. I mean, we got to have some things go our way. Maybe we catch them on a day where they're not playing their best. But as an athlete, you always feel that's going to happen. So I think it's you have to have that mindset to do like I said, the preparation and everything that it takes to get ready to play one of these games.
Tim, last thing, man. I know they had a nice win 2 weeks ago over Florida, but wow. Kentucky got boat raced this past week. My gosh.
Man, we did. Yeah. We got off to such a bad start. And, on the road at Georgia, and Georgia was playing lights out that day. We moved the football pretty well. We just had a bunch of penalties that killed a few drives. And, once we got behind and they started, their quarterback got hot and they took off on us. But we've got a big one this week. We got Missouri coming in town tomorrow. It's a big game for us. We can win this when we go into the bye week 6-1, and we got Tennessee coming back after the bye. So this is a huge one for us. We've got to get this one and bounce back from that embarrassing loss last week.
Yeah. Hey, if it's any consolation, Tim, Georgia has gone out and bought the best players the game can buy. So, I mean,
that's right.
That's what you're looking at.
Coach Stoops said it correctly. Yeah, he did. Coach Stoops mentioned that. He did. He said, it's hard to compete with these guys when they have, these collectives and these funds where they can go out and just buy all these 5-star kids. And that's just the way the game is. It's not a knock on Georgia. That's just the way college football is these days. And they're rolling, man. They're hitting on all cylinders. Great coaching staff, great players, 2-time defending national champs. It looks like they're heading for a third one. So it's a great football team. And yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
Couldn't agree more. Tim, thanks. We'll see you next week.
All right, guys.